Hello, everybody. This is KJ Waters. I am here with Suzanne Kelman. We are with Blondie and the Brit, and we haven't talked to you in quite some time. I wanted to catch you up on where Suzanne was. There's a lot of things that have happened. If you've been looking at our Facebook page, you've seen a lot books coming out from her. So I just wanted to do a quick interview with her and kind of give everyone an update on where she's at. So let me start by giving you a little sense of who she is. We'll give you her new bio. It's a little different than it was. So Suzanne Kelman is an Amazon International best-selling author of A View Across the Rooftops and When We Were Brave, that together have sold over 150,000 copies and are published by Book Couture, an imprint of Hachette UK. Is that right, Suzanne?
Yeah, Hachette.
She's also the author of the Amazon International best-selling book, The Rejected Writers Book Club, published by Lake Union, which was the first book in the Southly-based series. Other books in the series include The Rejected Writers Takes the Stage and The Rejected Writers Christmas Wedding. Kelman's an award-winning writer-screenwriter whose accolades include Best Comedy Feature Screenplay Award from the LA International Film Festival, the Gold Award from California Film Awards, and the Van Gogh Award from the Amsterdam Film Festival. In 2015, her script Held was recognized by the Academy of Motion Pictures and was shortlisted to the top 10 of the Academy of Motion Pictures Nichols Fellowship competition. Welcome, Suzanne. That is a mouthful.
I didn't realize it was that long till you said it.
There's more. I couldn't read it all, but I gave everyone the big,
totally fine,
big chunks.
Yeah.
So tell us what you've been up to the last year or so. We've kind of been very quiet over on Blondie and the Brit because you've been writing so much. I've been trying to write a lot more too, and we apologize for our disappearance for the last little bit, but why don't you give us an update?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to remember where we were, but I think I was still with Lake Union. So what has happened since then is I had an idea, the screenplay Held that you were just talking about. We decided, my agent thought it'd be a good idea to write that as a book. And when I finished writing that as a book, I presented it to Lake Union, and they were just inundated with World War II at the time, and they just couldn't take it. And so we actually did a search around, and she started pitching other publishers, and we eventually got a home for it with a company called Book Couture that have been wildly successful for me. Can't say enough about them as a company. And they loved it. They published it in October last year. And we followed it up with When We Were Brave, which was published in February of this year. And it's just taken off. I mean, we've sold a lot of books. It's been very well received. It's been great. So I really took a big genre change. We went from that kind of, female feel-good, humor, small town into totally World War II, which is a huge change. But it's done really well. I've been really pleased with how it's been received and the way it's going. So yeah, big change for me. So
you have been extremely successful with your writing, and I think it's really interesting that you took a screenplay. I was, met you right around the time of all that was happening, and you went to the, what was the film festival in France?
Oh,
film festival.
Yeah, the forgotten.
Cannes, right?
The big Cannes, yeah.
Yeah.
Cannes Film Festival, and that was actually with another movie that I was producing. But yeah, I went to Cannes. That was all about the same time. You're right.
Yeah, that's about the time that we met. But anyway, so this screenplay was really well received, won accolade, or was nominated for accolades, and you've turned that into a book. Now, tell us a little bit about the story. I love this story. I think it is fascinating how you found this tell us how you found it and how it turned into this amazing.
Yeah, it's actually been on a journey for 20 years, which is really interesting, which is crazy to think. So all you out there who are still writing and thinking, will it ever happen? It took 20 years for this story to finally come out. But what it was, and longer than that for when it happened. So what it was 10 years ago, in 2010, a friend of mine was telling me this story about an incredibly brave act that a man did during World War II. And she'd found it 10 years before when she'd been doing some research for a theatre project she was doing. And it was just this little tiny story that she saw on a little plaque. And she was just so touched by this incredible sacrifice this man makes that she wrote it down, and just held on to it for a really long time, thinking, gosh, that'll make a great story one day. And she lost it, you know, the piece of paper, but she never forgot the story, which is good.
Yeah.
And we were talking in 2010, and she told me about this story, and she went home that night, and I couldn't sleep. You know, I walked through the kitchen and I was thinking, gosh, that story's so moving. And I remember what moved me was the fact that I realized that I wasn't capable of what he did. Wow. And it's very often, I don't think we often are put in a situation where we feel that, you know, if a child runs out into the road, you think you could do this, or sure. If somebody had a burning building, you feel that maybe you could run in. But this one thing, I thought, I don't think I could do that. And I'd never, ever really ever given that much thought. And so that really started us on the journey of what kind of a person would get to a point where they would make this kind of a sacrifice.
Can you tell us what the sacrifice was?
Actually, because it kind of gives away the whole part of the story, and I want you to go read it and be surprised.
Tease it though, in terms of like the setting and what's happening.
Oh yeah, I can tell you all about that. So yeah, so what we ended up doing was we ended up doing some research trying to figure out who this guy was, but we just couldn't find out. She couldn't remember where it was from. So we started researching different countries during that time that we didn't know a lot about. And one of the ones that we came up with was Holland. And I hadn't seen a lot about the Dutch resistance. And so we started to do a lot of research, and we were so inundated and so touched by the incredible story of the Dutch resistance and how they'd hid so many Jewish people. And, you know, and I'll just give you the statistics, which may or may not be totally on track, because I don't always remember all the numbers, but it was like 150,000 or close to that left Holland to go to the camps, you know, that were taken from Holland, I should say, to go in the camps. And only 5,000 Dutch Jews came back, 5,000 out of 150,000.
That's terrible.
But 30,000 were saved in people's basements and attics and barns. So it showed the incredible job that the Dutch resistance did in saving a whole nation of Jews, Dutch Jews. And so we felt like that was a story that hadn't been told. And we felt like if we're going to set this anywhere, we should set it in Holland and find the right protagonist for that. And that's what we did. So even though we don't know for sure where the story happened, we actually felt Holland was a really good fit for that. So yeah, the story is about a reclusive, shut down professor of a university who's had something very tragic happen in his life, and because of that he has shut himself down to the people in the world around him. And then he's put in this incredible situation of an ex-pupil ends up on his doorstep, and he has the choice of having to hide him in his home, which of course he hasn't shared with anyone for many years. So he does that, and they have this incredible bond that they form between them over the years of the war. And then something happens and he has to make this incredible sacrifice. So yeah, so that's kind of the background of the story.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. So that is what dove you into the World War II. You already had a screenplay that you turned into.
Yeah, and it actually was called Held as a Screenplay. It's now called When We Were A View Across the Rooftops as a book. So,
right. And so when you pitched this to Book Couture, they loved it, right? Didn't they?
Yeah, they Isabel, my editor, who's fabulous, she said she couldn't put it down. She said, I took it on holiday because I never take work on holiday. She said, but I just loved it. And she totally got it straight away what it was about. And so I just loved her straight away. And they took it, she did great editing on it. And I think it turned out pretty good. So
well,
it's my favorite story so far that I've written. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's interesting. Now, how many reviews do you have on that book?
Gosh, I don't know. I have over 1,000 on Amazon, maybe 2,000 now, and like close to 4,000, I think 5,000 on Goodreads. So we have a lot of reviews.
A lot of people have read it. The Book Couture has done a fabulous job for you. And this is something, I mean, a lot of us authors are looking at, do we want to be indie? Do we want to be, and that means independent publishing, or do you want to go with a publisher? What are your views on that? You've kind of done all of the various choices, or at least several.
Well, we were just talking about earlier, I like to think of myself as a hybrid. You know, I started out as an indie author, and I got picked up by Lake Union, and then now obviously I'm working in traditional publishing, and I like both. I think there's value in both. There's not a good or a bad. And I'm very fortunate that Bookature is something in between of a very traditional publisher. It's not part of the big five, and it's not indie. You know, I'm not worrying about my book cover. So here's the thing: with your indie author, you have so much more choice. You can choose your book covers, you can choose the content, you can choose the right editor for that, you can choose how you sell it. You know, and so some of those choices are taken off you when you hand that over to traditional publishers. But of course, you don't have the expense, so you don't have to pay for the publishing. You know, if you've got a good company, they also do a lot of promotion for you.
Right.
But I don't think there's a bad or a good. I think it really depends on your project. Like if I was writing a memoir, or if I was writing something that was for a specialty group, I probably wouldn't even look at a traditional publishers. I would go straight indie, because I could just pitch to that group or those people. Same if you're going to do like a series, or you're going to do fantasy or something that is maybe harder to sell. You know, some of those genres that are tougher sell to traditional publishing. I would definitely be looking to indie selling and like building my market, you know, from newsletters and on social media. Yeah, so there's definitely there's a pro and a con to both. If you're out there and you're an indie, great. And and as I said, I quite happily would move between the two, depending on the project.
Right, which I think is really exciting. I love, like, when we first started talking about this, you're just like, I'm indie, I will never be traditional.
Yeah,
I didn't want
to be published. I'm a control freak, so I was like, I want to have my own covers, I want to do my own promotion, and I also wanted to not be tied down to a lot of deadlines, which of course you get with traditional publishing. So, and so I was kind of fought it a little bit. In fact, you were there when I made the decision. Do you remember, KJ?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I happened to be there when you open up the email from Lake Union, and you're just like, this is fake. And I was like, no, wait, don't throw that away. Open it.
Who writes you and says they're going to give you a book deal, you know? So, yeah.
Right, without, you know, you hadn't even pitched him, which was so cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the beauty. I tell a lot of my clients, I'm a consultant as well, and I tell a lot of my clients, you know, if you want to get right into this and you want to have control over your book, it's not the worst idea. You're not shooting yourself in the foot for going traditional eventually by starting off indie. No. I mean, that's what you did. You started off indie. You had a great cover. You had a great concept. You had great reviews. You worked really hard to build all those things. And then somebody noticed you and picked you up with that particular book. You didn't even have to start a new series for that. So I'm not saying that everyone
gets my advice too. Exactly the same. If you're out there and you're not sure, go indie. Publish it, because it's even better to send a book to an agent or whatever. It's so much easier, it's cleaner and everything. You can email them that book if you're interested in pitching it to an agent. So absolutely go indie first.
If you have a book that you're super special to you and you feel like it really needs to be traditional, I would definitely save that and pitch your agents. And then, you know, if something happens where that doesn't go through, maybe it doesn't fit the market exactly, then go indie. But like, I think, you know, as you're getting your feet wet and you're not sure what you want to do, that's kind of what I did. I was like, I don't want to wait. I've heard all these things about like it takes 2 years and you go through all these rejections. So I was like, I'll just do it. So you have choices out there, and I think the choices are the best they've ever been for authors.
I agree. And there's no shame now. I mean, years ago, indie publishing was like, if the publishers won't take you, then you go indie. But the reality is now, many traditional publishers, published authors that I know are indie publishing, either under a different name or a different genre. I talk to them all the time. They're like, they have 3 books indie and they have 4 traditional. Yeah, it's very, very common. You may not know it because they may be under a different name, because a traditional publisher is a marketing machine, and they're trying to give their readers, you know, the same brand, you know, for an author, and they may not want to throw your fantasy in there if you're doing like me, World War II, and so they might not want to pop that up because it confuses the audience. But if you've written something like that, you can totally publish under a different name, an indie book, and that works just as well. You know.
Now, you didn't change your name. Tell them that the first series you did independently and then got picked up by Lake Union was The Rejected Writers. Tell them what genre that's in and how, you know, like how did you make the choice to keep your name? You didn't change your name.
Well, actually, we were going to change my name. I mean, we actually had a name picked out and everything. And I even now, I think I still have a Twitter account. And when we went, because that's how Lake Union if they were going to pick me up, they were going to pick me up under a different name. And so, but when I went to Bookature, they looked at everything, and I think they felt that Suzanne Kelman, my name that I'm under, had so much social media behind it and other things. That was my understanding. I don't know why they made that decision, but it was their decision to keep me as I am, as my real name, which was fine as far as I was concerned, because I didn't really want to have to do all that social media and change all that. That's building from the bottom again. And so I was glad that they did that. So So
and then it's selling your other series. People love these books now. Now tell them the different in the genres. How are they different? What are they?
They're very different. So I mean, the first three books are all women's fiction, humor, small town, you know. And now these next three books, the two that I've got out and the one that's coming out in October, they're all World War II. Very, very different genre, historical fiction, completely different audience to an extent. But I do find what's interesting is there's a crossover. So if one of my books in historical fiction is doing well, I see my numbers go up on my Late Union books as well. So you just never know. You know, there's always a crossover, I think.
Well, I think they're all of them are women's fiction, right? Women,
all women's
heroes, women. Well, I guess Held is more male focused, right? That's a little different.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, it was from a male perspective, but it's still mainly women that read it, you know.
So I think, you know, people that read a lot and they find an author that they really enjoy, that they're going to follow them through their line, which is the beauty of having Suzanne Kelman. I mean, like, to have your name, to not have to restart over, and then those books wouldn't have any connection to you necessarily unless your social media claimed it. But I do think that it's been a really good setup. So I'm about to pitch, I'm about to write a series and pitch it to, you know, agents and things like that. And I would love to keep my own name, because the same thing, it's like to not have to build the whole brand and to manage two brands. I mean, I'm already swamped with all the stuff you need to do to manage one.
Exactly. One name's enough. Who needs two?
Well, it is, you know, there's so many things you got to do. So tell us about, so now you pitched your first book. It did really well. They were really happy with the sales. They also have Suzanne Kelman, the marketer, behind their traditionally published item. And I think that is a really huge value added for the publisher, because you already had an audience, you already had social media presence, you're good at the newsletter thing, you figure out all like the learning curve things already. Did they take that into account?
Indie publishing, start building your market, because even if you end up being traditionally published, and we have a great marketing team this week, and here's an example. So this week, my book went on a Kindle deal, 99 pence deal in England, which meant it went into a Kindle deal for the day. And so my marketing team for my publisher sent me an email saying, hey, it's going on the deal. So straight away that day, I threw it into my newsletter, and I managed to put it up about 50. It was about 99 overall, which is incredible. I mean, Amazon did a great job of promoting it, but I was able to like nudge that into the 50s just by sending it out to my newsletter. So you're always none of that is ever not useful and out on my social media. So be building all the time, because even with traditional publishing, I think that really helps to be able to throw it out to my list and throw it out to social media and get that 50 spots just by doing that. Helps everything, gets it even in more people's eyes.
And I'm curious, is it a factor when they decided whether to pick you up? They love the story. Who's the person behind it? Will they be able to write another book? Well, you've already done 3. Will they be able to help you with social media, or at least be some kind of a presence, a fan base and stuff? They already knew that. So I don't know what they thought, but I would think you'd be a really easy one to pick up because you have all that stuff built.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, I don't know, because obviously when we pitched them, Andrea, my agent at the time, put all of that together when she pitched them. My social media, I had 10,000 people on my mailing list at the time. She pitched all that at the time, and I'm sure they look at all of that. I do know that I do meet traditionally published authors that have none of that. They basically, hardly have even a Facebook account. And it's not that I think if you don't have that stuff, it's going to be a problem. But I think the more that you have, the more chance. It's all about selling books at the end of the day, and the more you're putting out there in the world, the more people are going to see it and hopefully buy it.
Yeah,
so it never goes to waste.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There are plenty of authors that don't know squat about it because they sold the story and they sold. I mean, the agents are also looking at, can you write another book? Are you going to be a one-hit wonder? And they put all this into it and start to build your brand, and then it peters out because you don't bother to write more. If they can see that you've already got some books out there and that you're, at a decent pace of putting stuff out, that they know you can work. You've got a good work ethic, and are serious about it. So yeah, cool. All right, so you have 2 other books that are in the World War II German historical fiction categories. Why don't you give us the names and a little bit about what their stories are? And did you connect them into Hell, the A View Across the what is
Rooftops? I know.
I used to
connect them in. You mean, are they like a series?
Yeah, I know the answer, but I want.
No, they're not a series. They're all my historical fictions are standalone. So, yeah, and so the second book. The first book was How Far Would You Go to Save Another Human Being? And the second book is How Far Would You Go for Love? And so it really is, even though it's World War II and it incorporates this SOE, which was the secret spy network that Churchill put together and sent into Europe to create chaos, basically, taking down lines, sending back radio transmissions. And so this is dual timeline. So we have a contemporary story set in the present, and we have a story in the past in the 1940s about a female spy being sent into France and all that happens to her. And so the story basically, I'll do a really quick recap of the story. The story starts in the contemporary story where we have a woman who's going through a life tragedy of her own, and she's doing an exhibition, and they've blown up these big pictures of World War II. And as she's going around the exhibition, she looks at one of the photographs, and off to the side, out of focus, she sees a woman who looks like a member of her family. I mean, has the same looks, the stance, everything. And she's sort of shocked because she didn't see it when they're small. The photographs are small. So she looks at it and takes a photograph and then thinks it's her great auntie who was alive during the war. But when she goes to talk to her grandmother about it, there was this secret sister, the secret auntie that she knew nothing about, who was a black sheep, who apparently turned and rescues a Nazi from a hospital and sneaks him back to Germany. And no one talks about him in her family, and she just can't put the story down because she wants to know what happened to this auntie. And so she follows the trail to find out if this woman was still working for SOE, which was the secret Churchill network, or had she really been turned by the Nazis. So it's the story of her finding that out while you're following the World War II story in the past.
And give us the name of that one.
It's called When We Were Brave.
Right. And I'm actually listening to it on Audible right now, and it's amazing.
Oh, you are?
I am.
Yes. How far are you in?
I'm probably about a quarter of the way, or maybe a third of the way in. It's so good. I mean, it's a different style than I listen to a little more gritty stuff, but the accent of the woman and the details of the story, I feel like I'm in both places. And the cool thing, I write time travel where you go back in time. It's kind of the same thing because you've got a contemporary person and their issues and all this stuff, and then you switch to the point of view of the person back in time. So I'm really
I'm flattered that you're reading it, KJ. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, it books like that are why I love to make myself read Audible, because it makes me go walk. I do it when I'm walking or riding my bike, and exercising. And now it's like, well, I guess I'll go again today so I can listen to it.
It's what motivates me to exercise too. It's like, so where was it in my book?
Kids.
I'm excited to see what you think of it. So.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so impressed. The writing is meticulous. It's beautiful. I know
and the reader is fabulous.
Yeah,
fact,
she did a really good job.
I can officially announce this, but I will tell you that she is doing my next book, and I'm so pleased because I thought she did such a good job.
What's her name?
Alison. Oh, Alison, I'm so sorry. I can't remember your second name, but Alison, I could look it up really quick, I suppose. But
that's
Alison something.
If you go on Amazon, you'll see the Audible version. If you're on Audible, that's where you pay a fee once a year, and they give you as many books as you want to read, or you get credits or whatever. But
I wish they would put me in the library. I really do, because I want more people to hear it. But they haven't done that yet.
It's your publisher's choice, right? I mean, they get to.
I'm not sure how that works because my publisher is British, so I'm not quite sure how that works, the American library system. But yeah, that's something to do. I don't have part.
Yeah. All right, so that book is doing really well. Why don't you tell, like, part of the reason I wanted to do this interview now, I mean, I wanted to do it for a while, but you had an amazing week. Tell people what your stats.
I did have an amazing week.
It was just incredible.
The writer, anyone who's writing out there, you know, you have terrible weeks where you've got the flu and you're on a deadline and you're just like, why am I doing this again? We have weeks like that, and often, normally, you know, suddenly something wonderful will happen. You'll go, wow, if only people knew that I'm like feeling really ill right now and I'm not speaking to my husband and whatever.
Right.
I had this great week, you know, with the Kindle. But I was talking about the Kindle deal that went up. As I said, it was in the UK, and it eventually got all the way down to number 6 overall
in the whole store, right?
Incredible. Yeah, of the whole store. So it's number 1 still in all its categories. So it's number 1 in historical fiction, it's number 1 in German fiction, but it's it's gone up now, but it got right down to number 6. And on the same day, my other book, which is in pre-order, which is a book called Under a Sky on Fire, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, that actually went all the way to hot new release, the very Amazon's hot new release as well. So I had number 1 hot new release and a number 1 in all its categories, and you know, it was incredible. It was just all in the same day. And that doesn't happen very often. That was a pretty exciting day.
Pretty good day. And that tells you what Book Couture does for people. I mean, I've just been so impressed with this. You are enjoying working with them. You have deadlines, but they work with you, giving you more time. The editors seem to really get what you're trying to do with the stories. They're not trying to change it a whole lot. I mean, I feel like they've done such a good job with all the elements. The covers I've loved, you know, the blurbs, everything. Plus, they really seem to understand how to make Amazon work, Facebook ads. I mean, the combination of services they provide to potential authors is incredible. I mean, most of the places I've seen don't.
Now, if you are an author, you can actually, if you've got a finished story, you can pitch them directly. You don't need an agent. You just go to bookouture.com, which is BOOKOUTURE, Bookouture. And I think it's like couture. I think it's like book couture. I think that's what it's supposed to be. And so go to bookouture.com and just go to the page, and you can literally upload it. And they try to get back. It says, I'm not sure how they are, but widhin a month they'll get back to you and let you know.
Fantastic. Yes. Yeah, so and it's a really good option if you've got books. I mean, obviously they didn't. They're picking up more books from you too. Like, I almost think once you get in good with the publisher, they want to know what else you're capable of writing. And
we build a relationship, you know.
Yeah. That's how they got the 3 books. That, you know, you started with 1, and then you're like, oh, I have these other ideas.
Yeah, well, they actually the first book was a 2-book deal. We did that one, and we did When We Were Brave. And this actual next book, the one that's coming out in October 13th, is actually part of the second. They actually did another 2-book deal with me. So I have one coming out in October, and I have one coming out next year.
All right. Well, give us the short version of what Under a Sky of Fire is about.
Yeah. Oh, I so loved writing this book. And it's funny, and I don't know, every story, you know, has a different emotional impact on you. But this story, I think because it's England, so it feels very familiar to me. What I wanted to do, and this will kind of cap it. When I was trying to find a quote for the beginning of the book, I thought, gosh, I want to find a quote about women in England during the war, and like Churchill saying something amazing about them, or somebody saying something amazing. And I spent 2 days trying to find a quote just about women during the war.
Wow.
And there was nothing out there. And I was like, this is why I wrote this book, because, you know, women did incredible things. They were fighting, they were keeping their homes, they were trying to keep their families together, they were figuring out the rationing thing. And like Matthew, I was telling my husband, I go, I said, no husband goes to the front with his children and his wife and his home and to fight. I said, but that's what women were doing at home, because they were working just as hard. They were fighting the German bombings. They were doing all these amazing things. And yet they had to still juggle all the things that women juggle, you know, same as the pandemic. You know, right now, women are homeschooling their children, and they're doing all these amazing things, as well as just being whoever they are in the world, you know. And that was very, very similar during World War II, and we don't hear much about that. And so my idea was to how many ways can I tell the story of women during World War II? So it's actually, the protagonist is a woman from Scotland who has a secret. She has a child that she had out of wedlock that she gave up for adoption that she knows is in London. So part of her reason coming and joining the Air Force in London is to try and trace this child that she gave up for adoption. But and of course, it's during the Blitz. So people are being bombed and killed all the time. So there's a real time pressure for her to try and find this child and check that she's okay and that everything turned out all right for her. And she feels this huge gap in her life since she left. But as well as that, you've also got two other stories of other women. One is working for Churchill. So I wanted to see the world from the position of Churchill making the decision. So she's in the room while he's making some of these incredible decisions that were made during that time about bombing Germany in retaliation for the London bombings and things like that, and her experience of that. And she also has a family who she has to send away, and we go through the emotional experience of that. A husband who goes missing, she goes through experience of that. And so we have all of that. We have her, that perspective. We have this woman who is coming down looking for her child, and she's also a plotter. So she's actually plotting the planes that are on the big maps, and she's pushing them into position. But she falls in love with one of the pilots that she's listening to on the headset. So she's also like listening to him in danger every day as she's doing her job. And then the last person is Diana, who was actually based on my own grandmother's story, who is a barrage balloon girl. And literally what they did, which they ran out into the night when everyone was going underground. They ran out and flew these incredible balloons to stop the planes dive bombing, and also to protect the city. And they literally would be out there while the bombs were dropping on their head. And that's what my grandmother did during the war.
Wow.
So you're seeing it from lots of different perspectives in a very real time of the 9 months of the Blitz. So it starts at the beginning of the Blitz and goes right the way through until the last bomb drops in May.
Fantastic. I was talking to you at the very beginning of these like planning out stages, and so for me to see it all like come together is really cool. I'm gonna read that.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, you're always great for brainstorming and trying to figure that out. So.
It's fun though. You have so many ideas. Oh yeah, show us the covers. These are. Oh wow.
I haven't looked yet, but and they did a beautiful job of the cover. And this is Lizzie, my protagonist. They did a good job of that too.
The emotions that come up looking at that. Do you have the other covers? I see them behind you.
I do, yeah. I can show you real quickly because I've got them on the wall. So I can
pop them off. Show them. This is the first one, based on Held, right?
Held. It's on the screenplay Held. And then we have When We Were Brave. Just happened to have them right here.
How convenient. Look at that. And the feeling that they've connected them so well. They all have similar colors.
Yeah, the colors are beautiful.
Feelings, but enough different details that you know it's a different story. They give you the hints of like where location and setting and that kind of thing.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to show you another picture. This is my grandmother and my grandfather. Look.
Oh, look at that. She's the one that's...
This picture was by my side as I was writing. I was talking to me, my granny and my granddad. And my grandfather's in it as well. I actually do the story of how they met and married during the war. And so their story is in there as close as I could get. That I had to fictionalize it, obviously some of it, because to make this other story fit. But the way they met is exactly how they met, and the way that he proposed to her is exactly the way that she was proposed to. So it's really a fun story.
It's fair. No wonder it's your favorite. It's connected to your...
I also think that it was amazing because I actually started writing this on the, I think it was the 13th of January of this year. And on the 24th, or something around that day, maybe it was a little bit, maybe it was close to the 20th, it was like a week, just over a week, was the first case of coronavirus in my state, because we were the first to be diagnosed. So it was incredible. So all the time I'm going through the Blitz, I'm going through this pandemic. And so it's crazy because, all the uncertainty felt the same. Obviously I haven't got bombs dropping on my head, but the uncertainty and the food rationing and it's something out there that's dangerous. And so I felt a lot of the same emotion they were feeling, in a small way. Obviously being stuck in your home with Netflix is a little different than being out with the bombs, but still. And I think that's why I loved writing this book, because I grieved so much of what I was going through their story. you know, when they lost, when their world became smaller and harder. Mine felt like it was going in the same direction. So it really was helpful to process. And I hope that when people read this, they're inspired, whether we're in the pandemic or not, they're inspired by what we've been through in the past and how strong we are. And the quote at the beginning of this book is, you know, a woman of strength, or something like this, paraphrase, because I can't totally remember, is knows that that strength is built in the journey. And, you know, it really is about how they become strong through what they go through. And I feel like that's what's happening with us at this time. So
yeah. And it also gives you hope. Like, they went through all that. It looked like the world was going to end, but then
exactly
around and things came back to normal life. We learned a lot of things. We changed a lot of things, but you know, we're still good. So yeah, there's hope at the end of it.
There's hope.
Yeah. So I have been fascinated by something you've developed on your own about how to write stories quickly. And you're considering doing a class, how to write a first draft in 6 weeks, which to me is like unheard of, because I take so long to write anything. So I'm going to be your guinea pig this fall.
Yeah.
Working on this on a new series of mine. So why don't you give people just a little teaser of that? And I think we're probably going to offer something for our viewers, whether it be a book or materials or video, something. And we like to gauge your interest. If you all have interest or questions, let us know. But give us a little teaser of what you've developed. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, well, what I did was I did something that we do in the screening. I took something from the film, the screenwriting industry, which is called layering, which basically, when people are writing screenplays, they're often writing 2 or 3 at the same time. So they would be writing, you know, and then you'd be also doing other things at the same time. So what I did was I just took that model and transformed it into what I do with writing books. So what I realized very quickly is, first of all, we all know this, the blank page is the scariest thing in the whole world to start with. And so you don't start with a blank page. And also I realized that we often have attention for short amounts of time for things. So, you know, nobody feels good sitting down, well, maybe some people, but not many people feel happy sitting down for 12 hours a day and all they're doing is writing. We're not effective by, you know, hours 6 or 7, really. You only have a window of time where you're really good at physically coming up with words and making pretty sentences. And so I realized that there's actually many areas of the process of writing a book. And so what I did is I split it down to lots of different sections that you can swap from one to the other very quickly. So let's say, and the way I did this was like my life. So in my life, I can easily, as a woman, or I don't want to be sexist, but just as a person, I should say, because lots of men can do this too, is I can literally be thinking, oh, I need to book an appointment for the doctor. Oh, and by the time I need to check that email, and oh, I need to put the wash on. There's all these different things that you can do at the same time and be effectively doing them. No one stands in front of the washing machine for 4 hours and does the washing. So I thought, what I'm going to do is break down the writing process into a similar experience. So for example, the first 10 minutes of the day is just plotting. And that's basically, if you don't know what that means, that is just thinking about the story in a smaller version, making notes or brainstorming or thinking about the story in a much smaller version. What we tend to do is we'll plot forever, or some people, then we'll like start a first draft forever, then we'll start a second draft forever. But it's actually better for me. Yeah, exactly. It's better. Let's say you start plotting. And I do a whole brainstorming thing that I do to get to that phase. You start plotting, and then once you finish plotting, you then start a first draft writing. And then in the second hour, you start second draft writing on a different part of the story. So what you're doing, you're changing that brain. So it's doing different things at different times, which sounds kind of confusing. But when you actually do the process, I actually find it really easy to do.
Yeah.
So my first draft, I now always do as a a transcription. I don't physically write a first draft. I actually transcribe a first draft, which means I record it and somebody else types it up for me. And why do I do that? And it takes a switch to learn that skill. But you know, I give you some tips on how to do that when I do my class. But what that does is it gets it out as fast as you can. You can do 2,000 words in 10 minutes. And if they're terrible words, well, who cares? It was 10 minutes of your time. what this stops you doing is writing one book for 6 years, finish it and going, oh God, that was awful. You know, whereas all you're really spending is 6 weeks on a project, and you can see if it's very good very quickly. And so, yeah, that first part of the process is transcribed, and that goes off to be transcribed. And then I take whatever transcription I get, and I still don't edit at this point. At this point, I turn it into Grammarly, which is an editing process. So I get the sentences right, and it puts all the commas in for me, and it restructures things for me, you know. And it's only so that's the second part. So let's say I've done that. That's the second part of what I'm doing. It's only then that I actually start to physically start the writing. So when I actually get that when I actually sit to write, I already have something that's very clean, that has a beginning, middle, and an end, and is punctuated to an extent. And suddenly you're working with a much cleaner first draft than you would be if you are starting with that blank page from scratch. So I don't know if that sounds confusing the way it's actually easier to teach it than it is to describe it, but it actually works really fast. And what it means is I can easily get 4,000 to 5,000 words done in 3 hours. You know, you think about trying to do that physically with a screen, and that would take me like a week to do that.
Yeah.
So, but because you're doing things so fast, and you're only working on this edit, and you're only working on that edit, and you're only plotting this, it can happen really fast. So you did do some of this, KJ. Tell us about your experience, because I actually gave you this advice when you were doing, I think, was it Blondie? Was it Blondie's Diner, that book that you were working on? Yeah. How did that go with you?
It is fantastic, because I think what it does is you're using a different part of your brain for each of these. So one of them you're talking, and you have, you know, for me, it took there's a little bit of a learning curve to try to figure out how to speak like you would write, because it always came out stupid. I'm still not great at that part, so I just need to continually do it. But the beauty of that is that you know, that's one part. So you spend 15 minutes and you get your word count for the day.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's such a wonderful thought. Then you have time to go back and like, okay, so where am I in this? The plotting of it, I usually plot my novels out. I do the mind map and I plot it, but then I get stuck redoing the draft again and again. I never get to the end part, and then you have to go through the whole thing again. So it's just making me focus. And so the other thing I thought was cool about what you did is that you were doing different books with this same process. Not even the same one, but you had like this other story and this other story. I feel like with I have a short attention span, and I like new stuff. So to be having it like, okay, hour one, you know, I get tired of it, and then I go do like client work or something instead of sticking with writing. But with this method, it gave me a chance to do, my word count was done. Check. I felt really good. Happy experience writing.
Exactly.
Makes you want to come back the next day. Like, yes, I can do this. The second part was plotting the rest of the novel out, or starting with the book 2, where you can weave in the different pieces. But that doesn't take as much brain work. I could do this outside of my patio, in front of my pool.
Exactly. Yeah, I always
gave me like a different environment. So it's almost like I started a brand new day with something else. So like to have it in small pieces. Then if I was off at my daughter's volleyball or whatever, I could take that one card for that one piece I plotted out, and I'd be like, concise, small piece to write. Well, I know exactly where I'm going, and then you can just get it down.
And another thing you can do, actually, like at volleyball, is take that card that you've plotted out, and even start. I flip it over, and what I'll do is I'll do the beginning, the middle, and the end of the scene. So what was happening when she was coming in? What was the turning point in the scene, and what was her going out of the scene? So for example, let's say somebody finds a dead body. The beginning was they turn up at the house, she's coming in the door. The middle was, oh my gosh, she's found the body. The end would be her calling the police and them arriving. So that would kind of be the scene, so you know where you're going. And then all you've got to do when you come to actually rev that, when you whatever you're using for audio, is just figure out, you know, you're just talking through what you're seeing. The door, you know, you're opening the door, walked into the hall. It's actually really easy once you've got it labeled out like that. So it's great. I always have that flipped on the back, so that when I come to actually speak it out, it already tells me where I was from, what scene I was in before, what scene I'm going into. So it makes it really easy to write. Yeah. So I do actually, in fact, this very morning, I was just telling you, I actually have 3 books I have to write at the moment. And because it's easier for me to do it with this method, I literally just sat down with my husband and we went through all 3 and figured out when I'd be plotting what, and that it took me an hour, because then I work at the time and how many words I need to do to get to my deadlines with these books. So yeah, did that because I'm going to be writing 3 books at the same time. Because you're right, it's so much more fun to hit that second hour and go, oh, where was I in the love story? I was just in a horror. Now I can go to my love story, whatever. It's kind of fun. It's no different than reading 3 books or watching 3 shows on TV. It's exactly the same amount of work. It takes you a second to get in, then you go, oh yeah, I remember where I was. Right. And then you're back into that story.
And for me, it's refreshing because it's like, you're not thinking about the same thing, the same plot issue. Maybe you're
it's great for writer's block as well.
Yeah.
Because if you're stuck with one, you can just go on to the next one.
Right. Sometimes I get to the point and where I am, it's like, I know where I'm going. And then I'm like, wait, now what happens with this? And it takes me a day or two for my subconscious to kind of get in there. Like, what can we do? What are the choices? The Dexter method is, what's the worst thing that can happen? And how do I add 10 layers to that? That kind of thing.
Yeah. There you go. I love the Dexter method.
Skip ahead to a different part of the book or the plotting part or, the next in the series so that you have something that you're not just waiting for 2 days. You're
exactly.
And maybe just a different piece of it. So I've been really happy with it. I want you to publish a book with a little workbook with it at some point.
Yeah, that's what I'm planning to do long term. That's not on my schedule for this year, obviously, but next year I may have time to do that. So, because I would love more people to know how to do this. It makes it so easy. I speak to people all the time and they say, I've been out, 8 hours and I've done, 1,200 words. I'm like, oh my gosh, that must be so hard. Yeah, be working so long and so hard. And literally, I like to do 3 hours work and then be done for the day. And I've made 5,000 words happen. That's what I want to be doing. And that gives you so much more time to play with the beauty of it. If it's out and it's clean, then you can spend hours making it really pretty. And people often say to me, well, I don't like to plot because I like to figure out as I go along. But I still do. You wouldn't believe how often I plot a whole book out and it still goes in its own direction. But at least I know where the end is. I know where I'm going. So it really is helpful to have it plotted out that way. So
it does. And then like for me, I just spin my wheels less. If you're having a frustrating time figuring out, you don't know what you're writing, but you're writing it, you end up going in these weird tangents that you just have to chop off and throw away. Exactly. And if you have a very concise plan of where you're going, even if it changes a little bit, you don't put every detail in there. You have different ways that you can still stay within your basic plot. But
this one last thing I wanted to say is I actually take out 40 cards, which is kind of a film industry thing too, which is 40 scenes, which is about a movie. And that ends up for me being about 40 chapters. So I try and do 2,000 words a card. But by the end of it, I have some cards, some scenes, some chapters that are 800 words. And then I'll have another chapter that's 3,000. So it kind of works out. And my last book that I just finished, the Under a Sky and Fire, I think I had 48 chapters. I started with 40. I ended up with 48. But I did get into 100 and I think nearly over 110,000 words nearly. So the book grew. So it wasn't that the system didn't grow, but the book actually grew.
Yeah, so, which is fine because that's where you get the flexibility.
80,000 is what I think 80,000 is a good first draft. And if it's 2,000 words, 40 cards, there's your book. And you can look at it all on one board, which is great.
Yeah. In fact, I've been using this method. You use index cards. You have all these various things, but I kind of stole your idea. I just want to quickly show this.
Oh, yeah, the board, exactly. Love it. What do the different colors mean, KJ?
Well, the different colors are I've learned this from you. Yeah. Each colored sticky note is a different character.
Right.
One of your
really, I actually do my cards in different characters in different colors. Yeah, so then you can see how much balance you've got.
Then I have subplot is a different color, both color blue. One is the main plot of the character and the other is the subplot.
Good. You're even more than me.
I've merged your version with Evan Marshall's The Marshall Plan for fiction writing.
Perfect.
But to me, to be able to see it all, what I usually end up doing is at the very last, I go back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 8 chapters of just my main plot. I need to mix in the subplot. I need to mix in a different character. Usually if there's time travel and you got one character in one time period and one the other, their plots they're separate. So you can move them around. It's different than mystery novel where you have to, this goes here, each person's plot has to be in a certain order, but I can mix up which part you read next. So part of the fun is you leave one character in a really bad spot and then you switch to someone else and you get into that. And I noticed you're doing that too in your story, the one that I'm reading. When We Were Brave, is that you've got enough going on with each of the characters that you get a good solid chunk, and then you switch to the other person. And for a reader, it's really fun because it's like, oh no, I forgot about where she was, and then you kind of get into that, and then it's neat to be in the two different time periods and the various other things going on. So
Yeah.
plot it out and have it in such a, I'm very visual. And my problem with using Word documents before was that it's just a mass of words and you're like,
I know. I'm very visual too. And color really helps me a lot. And I love having my cards all, it helps me so much. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's fun.
A great strategy. And then what I need now is a bigger whiteboard because everyone's almost out of space. So I don't know.
What book is that one? Is that one of the Blondie's Diners?
No, this is Killing Time. I'm writing.
Oh, it is Killing Time.
Third book in my time travel series. So I got to finish this one before I can get into my new series. So I'll be working.
Yeah, you're nearly done with it, right?
Yes, ish. Because then you have, this is like first draft plus kind of. So I have to.
Yeah. Katie actually merged a couple of books, which this was actually part of another book, and then you merged this into the third book. So you've had a lot of going back and hacking and changing and putting it together.
Yeah.
A lot of time.
And just, I need a better structure, but I'm in the habit of writing every day and getting, so once all the people that have been pandemicking with me are back to their
pandemicking, is that what we're doing with pandemicking?
Now a verb. We're going to, then I'll have a little more time, but anyway, well, Suzanne, this has been an absolute pleasure hearing about your books and your writing journey, your publishing journey, and then your creative way of tackling the problem of how do you get as much done possible. So I appreciate your time. This has been really fun.
Great. Thank you for having me. And as I said, my book will be out October 13th. So you can pre-order now on Amazon if you guys are interested in Under a Sky on Fire. So yes. Thank you very much for giving me this time.
You're welcome. You can always look up Suzanne Kelman, Kelman, on Amazon. You can see all the books that she has if you're interested. And
my website is actually on Amazon, so you can just go there if you want to find me as well.
That's right. So her website, we'll put links up on this if you want to go check her out. But it's just, I think, just as a writer, even if you're not into the style books that she writes, following what she's doing, looking at what her publishers are doing in terms of the blurbs and the, if you
do a really good job.
I think you can learn a lot just kind of following along with her successes. So
thank you, KJ. This was fun.
And as Blondie and the Brit, we hope on doing this in the future. I think it's a good medium. We were doing podcasts before, and now I think the video adds a lot. So let us know if there's other things you'd like us to cover and other guests. So thank you from Blondie and the Brit.